This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Hey, what's up and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. Ton of questions to get into, man. So let's just jump into it. First question is going to be from Anthony. Anthony is saying, I wonder if the Browns are still going to try to upgrade at linebacker or if they're going to see how this plays out with the current roster in training camp. I'm going to be honest with you. There has not been a ton that indicates to me that the Browns think much of not necessarily like a playmaking linebacker position, but those secondary roles in the linebacker room. I think they just are going to give some guys some chances and roll with what they got. And if they need to make a move, they'll make a move at the end of camp or trade for somebody, much like they did in 2021. But outside of it being a complete disaster, I think they have who they have at linebacker, and they are fine with that. The next question comes from Mr. Camtastic, who says, who do you like the most and the least? Oh, what do I like the most and the least about the work I do behind the scenes? You know, it's the same thing. It's the reaction to whatever I say. It can be the best thing because you can say something and you really like make people's day, or you give somebody some enjoyment for 20 minutes or whatever it is. Like, you can provide a helpful service to somebody, and that's good. Or you can open up somebody to a different way of thinking about a certain thing, which is cool. It's very rewarding. It's very nice. I think on the flip side of that, it probably is one of the more frustrating things, because one thing that can happen, something I'm learning and living with, is people can kind of just make shit up about what you say. Like, I see this pretty often in the comment section. Well, somebody will make up something I said and then argue against this made up version of this thing that I said. And it's usually they misinterpreted something that I said, or they don't really understand what I was going for, or the context that they're taking it out of is just completely out of whack. Like, there's a lot of times where people are arguing with me about things that I have said on the record and agree with, but they're arguing against me as if I don't agree with it because they kind of just need a straw man to get their shit off. And that is annoying because it's like, it makes you feel like you're wasting your time by putting all the work into these videos to push something out. Now, the important thing to remember is you can't live or die by your comment section. As nice as it is to make somebody's day and to hear them comment it, or as frustrating as it is to see somebody completely miss the point and make that my problem. It's also just a section of the people who watch this video, and a small section of the people who watch these videos. There are a lot of people whose days I make that never comment on these videos. Maybe they leave a like every once in a while, but they just watch, they enjoy it. And that's most people on YouTube. So I always have to remember that I don't want to get into a mindset of consistently arguing with people who don't agree with me online, because those aren't the main people talking. And as frustrating as it is to be taken out of context, most people watching get it. Most people watching understand what I'm trying to say and are reasonable. And I don't have to make that everybody else's problem. So, you know, I think that is one of the, I don't know if it's like the most frustrating things or the best things. It's just, it's a lesson that you learn by doing this. And you're not in control of how people perceive you. The next question comes from UK Browns fan. Do you think there's a reason the Browns haven't restructured Deshaun Watson? The fact that they could realistically take his current cap hit into the season is a credit to AB. But we know they like to remain flexible with their salary cap space. Keep it up. The awesome work as per usual, Q. I don't know what to make of this, and I won't know what to make of this until maybe 2 weeks into camp. If we get into mid-August and Deshaun Watson's contract is not restructured, then that is a thing, right? They're definitely seeming like they're planning on not restructuring. It could be that they've been planning to restructure all along and they're just waiting to settle this Coop thing, right? Like once Coop is settled and back at camp, and he'll probably be back whenever Deshaun Watson can full go at camp. Like, I don't expect him to be there at the start. I really wouldn't be surprised if he holds out, but Coop's a veteran player. He has his chemistry with Deshaun Watson, and I think Coop's ultimately going to play. But yeah, back to the main point of the question. If he doesn't get restructured and we're like playing preseason games, then I think they're not planning on restructuring. Then I can read into that more. But right now, I think it could have as much to do with Amari Cooper as it has to do with how they feel about Deshaun Watson, or it could have as much to do with just being able to get all the parties necessary in a room at the same time when it's convenient to get this whole thing done. I just don't know what to make of it. And I think we'll have a better idea what to make of it a couple weeks into training camp. So I feel like it's a little reckless to speculate, assuming one side or the other. I don't think it's safe to assume that the Browns aren't going to restructure Deshaun Watson. I don't think it's safe to assume that they are. I think it's kind of just up in the air at this point. So that's where I'm at with that. And I'm kind of in a holding pattern with the restructure stuff. Mr. Objective says, in your objective opinion, which would you say is a higher priority? To re-sign a top 5 linebacker in JOK or a top 10 receiver in Amari Cooper? If you had to choose one, which would you choose? You feel like the Browns could survive without the other. I would make it more of a priority to keep JOK because he's younger. I think Amari Cooper after this year, maybe next year, he's at the last couple of years of fitting into the Browns window is my whole point. After these next couple of years, Amari Cooper's not going to make a ton of sense for the Cleveland Browns at the money that he's at. But JOK is somebody who's young enough that he could be effective in this window and effective in a second window if that opens up for the Cleveland Browns like 3-4 years down the line. So yeah, I would go JOK because you know that you're going to get more out of that contract, and it's a lot less money. You're talking about with JOK maybe $14-15 million a year. You're talking about with Amari Cooper $26 million a year at the very least. Aaron says, in your opinion, how would the starting offensive line look like this upcoming season in 2025, in 2026 if the talents develop? Well, do you have your eye on the 2025 draft that you really would like on somebody who you would really like in a brown and orange jersey? I have no idea who's in that 2025 draft. I am focused on 2024 right now, but I have to imagine that the Browns are focused on that 2025 draft, and maybe they see a tackle that they like in that draft class. I thought this year was the year to do it. They didn't do it. There were a lot of tackles that I think are pretty good in last year's draft class. The Browns are at a precarious place because they have Zach Zinter, and I imagine Zach Zinter is probably going to replace Joe Bitonio in a year or two because Joel is probably going to retire in a year or two or not be on the Browns in a year or two. So that means that you still have to find somebody to play left tackle. Now, that might just be Jed. Jed's still young. They might just say, hey, we're going to roll with Jed, and that's the left tackle. I want to wait and see how this year goes with Jed. But maybe that's how the Browns feel. I feel like the offensive line is in flux. Outside of Ethan Posick and DeJuan Jones. Those are only two guys I'm like guaranteed are going to be in the spot they are. Zach Zinter, they hope that he can be a guard for this team, but I think they have long-term questions about what Wyatt Teller's standing is going to be with this team, because he's not bad, but he's either playing really well or not good at all. And there's really no in between. And that's starting to become more and more of a problem with Wyatt Teller. But that's my whole thing there with the tackles. Jacob, my bad, says, Q, do you think that Vrabel could help JOK take this game to another level? Since he played the position, obviously coached at a high level, I think he is a rated factor in having him on staff. I don't really think there's much he could do for JOK, to be honest with you. Like, it doesn't hurt, but I don't think there's much he can do for JOK, because like Mike Vrabel is not a coach that is going to do much for a dude like JOK. JOK is just a special talent. What Mike Vrabel was, while he was a very talented player, was more of a grinder. And I think Mike Vrabel is better for like the more workman linebacker in the crew, right? Like the Jordan Hicks, the Tony Fields is of the world, the Nathaniel Watsons of the world. I think that's where Mike Vrabel will be a lot more helpful, not just because those players are, well, outside of Jordan Hicks, are younger, but they're more similar to Mike Vrabel. JOK, he kind of played like how a safety did back in the day when Mike Vrabel was playing. So I don't know how much there is to help, but it can't hurt to have Mike Vrabel around to offer some suggestions every once in a while. CTG says, where do you think this home opener versus the Cowboys ranks on terms of top home openers post reactivation history? America's Game of the Week, Tom Brady's first call, and potentially record-breaking viewership. Certainly brings back memory of the 2008 home opener versus the Cowboys. September 8th may be the most anticipated day of the year in my household, just behind January 13th. I assume that's your birthday, right? That's got to be his birthday or somebody's birthday. But so happy birthday if it's January 13th, CTG. But I will say, yeah, it's up there. And the reason it's up there is there's a lot more confidence that this team is good than there was in like 2008 when they opened the season. Like, we all kind of knew that 2018 was going to be a disappointment. Like, we were hoping, but we knew. We knew. We was getting the most out of Derek Anderson. Like, it didn't feel like it was something that beat real. So I think, yeah, I would agree with you. I think this is probably the most anticipated home opener, and I think this is probably the biggest spotlight that the Cleveland Browns have had on a home opener game since '99. Right? Like, I would have to imagine this is as big of a spotlight that's been put on the Cleveland Browns, because I mean, this is a big deal, big game, and you're playing the Cowboys. So like, ESPN going to talk about this one. They ain't going to talk about the Browns if they do something well. They ain't going to talk about whatever Dak didn't do in that game, if they lose or if they win, but it's still going to be watched by a lot of people. Francis says, what did you think about Ward coming in number 2 on the cornerback list by coaches and executives? It makes sense to me, because if we're talking about cover corners, I don't think Denzel Ward's the second best cover corner in the NFL. But if we're talking about like well-rounded corners, like, this is somebody who makes a lot of stuff that the Browns like to do work. When Denzel Ward was not in there during that West Coast road trip last year, the Browns felt it, because Denzel Ward is good at so many different things that it allows you to get away with so many different things. Like, I talk about this with Greg Newsome. One of Greg Newsome's biggest issues is that he's not a very explosive athlete. I know people try to argue with me with this all the time. Look at the cone, look at the drills that he did at the pro day or the combine or wherever he did it. They're not good numbers that he put up. He does not have great explosion to keep up with wide receivers who can come out their breaks pretty fast and get downhill or left or right. That's been a flaw in Greg Newsome's games for a while. He's a great vertical corner. He's not somebody who can move well left to right, especially if you have him all the way out on the boundary. He doesn't have that kind of quickness like Denzel Ward has. And when Denzel Ward is not playing, that matters, because you can then do that to Greg Newsome when Denzel Ward's not playing. Martin Emerson has the exact opposite issue. Martin Emerson can go left to right kind of well, move pretty solidly, and he's just long. So he doesn't need to be as good as an athlete as Greg Newsome needs to be because he's long. He can just reach his way back into position. But where Martin Emerson does find himself in trouble is when he gets stretched vertically. Because the Browns have Denzel Ward, you don't ever really have to put Martin Emerson in those kind of positions. You don't ever have to put Greg Newsome in those kind of positions. So you get the best out of Martin Emerson. You get the best out of Greg Newsome because you have Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward also super underrated as a run defender. I've said this for a while now. I think he's a good run defender. Super willing. When he's on. And last year he was most certainly on. And he's a nosy run defender too. Like, he'll get in on screens, he'll get in on sweeps. He's a really good run defender as a corner. And I think that matters as well, because the Browns try to get away with being a lot lighter than a lot of teams. Like, the Browns have a lot of things that on paper you should be able to exploit. But the presence of Denzel Ward plus Myles Garrett makes it so you're so tied with what you can do as a offensive coordinator that you really can't exploit those weaknesses in the Browns defense. He's super important. That's why his health is so important to this team. Him and Myles Garrett really make that defense pretty difficult to scheme against. Calvin Rogers says, what's up, Q? Game 1 versus Dallas. What kind of game does Watson need to have to keep the media off his back, or is that even possible? I'm gonna be honest. I think, and maybe I'm just being horribly optimistic here, I think if Deshaun Watson plays well on national TV and everybody sees it. Now, I don't think he has to go crazy, but if he makes a couple of throws that make you go, oh, wow, look at that throw, and Tom Brady says like a couple of nice things about him on the broadcast, I don't think people going to do the whole thing that they've been doing the last couple of years, because the only reason people have been doing that with him is, one, the play has not been groundbreaking. Like, when you watch it, it's not something that makes you go, oh, wow, like it used to with Deshaun. So it's easier to get away with it. And not as many people were watching because he wasn't playing on many national TV games. But if he plays in front of everybody, he plays well, they're not going to be able to gaslight you. They're going to have to say he played well. And we're like 2 or 3 years post trade now. I think people have gotten to the point to where if he plays well, they'll just say it. I think we have to be at that point as people in the media where we're not just going to try to gaslight about it. If he's playing well, he's playing well. But that's it for Q&A. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.